seem to work. Although I think the people of Black Lives Matter have new tactics and new strategies that may in fact work and may galvanize us as people. But they must grow. It has to grow as a movement.
But don't you think that's part of the education, knowing the history, knowing the timeline? I was amazed. I just had a little conversation with that 39-year-old girl that I was telling you about at the beginning, and I didn't realize how young they were, and that they didn't know. And like you were in productions and so forth, and you got CNN, you got Facebook, you got all of this, but it's a jumbled mess, especially when you don't know when you come into the equation. When do you roll into it? And we never tell our children that the rules. This is the game, these are the rules. From the first day of school. So I find that we can't do anything unless they open a book and get some of that information for themselves, because they think, oh, I'm fit, I got this, and they know it, and they don't. And I took for granted that they did. We give them the benefit of the doubt, and I think that that's a great problem right there. We give them the benefit of the doubt. They think they know, and they get right into trouble again. Oh, they get trapped in trouble for the first time, and then that leads to
It reminds me of that poor young man at the University of Virginia who got beaten up by the liquor police. Yeah. And he kept saying that he was a student at UVA. And I'm going to myself, they don't give a goddamn where you're a student at. You're a nigga trying to go in this bar and they don't want you in there. And going to the UVA and saying it over and over again isn't going to help you. And I think our kids are confused that because they have what they think are safe places, they think they're safe. And yet at the same time, in some other part of the city, some other black boys being shot down by the police.
Absolutely.
And they're not connecting the dots. They don't see themselves as part of a continuum. I used to not believe in the idea of an underclass. I thought that the idea of London proletariat had been outlived. We had gone beyond that. But I'm beginning to think that there is a sizable portion of young people under 40 who are people of color who truly do not identify or know anything about poverty, about hunger, about want, about a sense of need, that you need a pencil, I need some paper, I need a table I can do my homework on. They don't have any sense of that. A sizable portion of young people under 40. And that's creating a terrible imbalance in terms of how we can progress. Because they can't even talk to these other children. They can't even talk to them. You wouldn't know what to say. Or would they didn't need to say anything.
Or is it their ID has been so hijacked that the kids that they are trying to talk to are actually speaking that same language? Because the the guys that heard the rants of this racist were there. They heard him. They said that they didn't believe
Right.
that he was going to blow up or he was going to shoot up
Shoot up
a college
college.
first and then so forth. But aren't our kids like alienated, open to everything right now? Isn't there maybe too much freedom? We can go to the internet, go anywhere, see any sex, do anything, and also run into ISIS as well. I mean, we can be introduced to that, and people are openly afraid of their children being subverted. And just like this young man right here, I sometimes think he may have learned a couple of those lessons right there at home. So it's not like, let's not be, right, let us not be kind of stupid in thinking that you learn a lot of lessons in the home. And if you're teaching or if you're working with kids, they come to school or they come to your workshops with a lot of toxins. And toxins that you don't know about, you don't know to handle. So so the challenges for teachers is enormous. And it's also, but who's aware? I don't remember how many people take any of these little black kids home to Hanukkah, you know, in sharing. I'm saying in the way of sharing the experience and so forth. I don't think that we interrelate to that extent.
Right.
But that's a great part of our education, travel, geography, civics, all of that, and humanities, which we don't really do a lot of anymore, you know, at any, diligently.
Yes.
And, you know, as we, try to be educated. And you know what, I had read in the New York Times the article that Toni Morrison had put up a couple of weeks, like in April, maybe a couple of weeks about, how courageous you ultimately have to be. And sometimes you take back steps and side steps and all kinds of steps, but you're always engaging. You're always engaging in thought. So, your loss, your latest work, loss, you're still growing.
Yeah, I hope so.
You're still going. I mean, you're still examining that same phenomenon, that same rite of passage, or living it over and over and repeating it. And that, I guess, that is ultimately how you stay free.
Well, it feels free.
Oh no, but absolutely, I know as artists.
Yeah.
We have enjoyed. Let's put these glasses here. Right, as artists, yes, we have definitely, enjoyed that. But we are afraid. We are afraid, and we need the actors, the dancers, the musicians, all of those people to in a sense, go beyond themselves. I think it's time for our children to really step up, stand up, and do a lot of those things that you say. And because they don't know, and also a fact of life is that we're so old they don't know us in a certain sense. They don't know who we are. Or what, we started from dance, and they still think, and a lot of people, they still think somebody's dancing. No. I read. And I grew up with people like you, and Maya, and all of those wonderful souls that taught us great lessons and so forth. But it is still that timeline, folks. You can't experience everything. But I'm saying that timeline, we as a people have experienced a great deal. and understanding that timeline and where you come into that timeline. Now, we don't expect you to know everything, but somebody's got to do something.
Yeah.
You can't forgive them for everything.
No, well, that's one of the reasons why I try to include a lot of history in my books that I write. So that there's always these references to old dead black people who are important.
Yes, amen.
Because that's the one way I can keep it in our consciousness. Like, in Lillian, for instance, Lillian's mother keeps gardens of orchids and Japanese plum trees. But she talks about these orchids and mentions John Hope Franklin because he grew orchids. And we didn't know, that's not something we know as a people. That what he did with his free time was grow orchids. So I put little tidbits like that in the middle of a paragraph in hopes that it'll attract someone's imagination and that it'll just pique their interest in maybe reading some history or some sociology. That's what I wanted to say.
I know, but I want it to resonate. Yes, in your sociology, it has to happen. Because we have to live here with all of these other people, and now we become more global. But we've decided we want to say that it's gentrification. Weren't we supposed to move along with these people? They bring services, better deli sandwiches, you know what I mean? Better, another kind of selection of beers and things like that, and all of the things that we want, you know? You know, because of what do our children do with their money? They get a Metro card, some sneakers, some hair, some nails,
phone,
and a phone, thank you, a phone, and they get a Metro card, and they go downtown, and they see Dark Night Rising, okay? And all of those things. And take, you know, their wealth right out of here. Yeah, but they can't be blamed for that either. It's the politicians, they don't put the money where it really needs to go anyway. Because you can get, it's easier for you to get tax abatements if you're a rich, you know, developer coming into a neighborhood than you can get for your children not to be marched over here to the park in the hot sun, sit at the table, shut up, don't move, don't do anything. And that's your summer vacation. It's, you know, it's disgusting actually what you really, I mean, you try to put it in a nice way, not in a nice way, in a dramatic way, something that they're gonna feel, something that, you know, visceral kind of, I'm gonna touch this, I'm gonna live this, and so forth. And the craft, what do we do with that? Nobody's, you know, studying that and trying to do that. You didn't, you know, not a word of your work had to change. And it's schools, but it's a partnership here. It's a partnership, and not all the time can you the blame's over. We're in this right now. So you can't call anybody else's name. You can't call anyone else's name unless maybe they've read one of your books or one of experience what you have experienced and understand and know. Since you thread the history, you give us the history, you give us all of that. You know.
Thank you, George.
I love you, and it is, you know, and you just gotta just keep doing what you do.
Okay.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, the proof in a Zaki4.